Good evening. Tonight we have with us Patrick Boland, KJ7ZSU, who is the owner of Geochron, a company that has been building and restoring Geochron world clocks since 1964. Patrick purchased the company 10 years ago and created the Geochron Atlas digital product, including a ham radio bundle, modernizing the clock for the 21st century. So thanks very much, Patrick, for joining us tonight to tell us more about your company. And so now it is over to you.
Great. I'm going to share my screen here. And here I go. Just a moment. All right, here I am. So I'm Patrick. I'm the owner of Geochron, and I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to talk about the Geochron mechanical clock, and then we'll work our way into the digital and talk about the ham radio bundle at the end. And I'll take questions at the end because of the format of this kind of presentation. So I'm going to turn on my PowerPoint slides, and over here you see I am sitting and calling to you from outside Portland, Oregon, and Camas, Washington, just over the Columbia River. And right behind me from my studio is where every Geochron Atlas has ever been created in the that's ever been sold over the last 7 years, right in the beam room behind me. So this is where we develop it. This is where we kit it. This is where it happens. And so I've got it's a very much a micro business. And that's sort of the theme about the whole thing in my head is that there's just 6 of us that run the whole company. So moving ahead, one of my favorite things to do is to visit Geochron owners. And in the last 3 years, I've visited 48 Geochron owners in 48 states on a motorcycle. Super cool. And so here I am, parked outside of ARRL and then on my motorcycle, and we did it 7 different legs. And then here I am chatting up with Bob and everybody else here at W1AW. And then moving on. So the way I plan these routes is that all the blue dots are people who follow my newsletter, and they have asked me to come visit them to check out their Geochron installations. This isn't all of our customers, just the people who want me to visit them. And this is how I plan my route. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then what it turns into is it looks like this. So the last 3 years, I did 7 legs. They know I'm coming, and then I park the motorcycle at some sort of major airport in Atlanta or Albuquerque or Toronto or Denver, and then keep moving a couple months later, and then close it up for the winter until the weather improves. So this has been one of my favorite parts of owning Geochron over the last 10 years. I'm so glad I can do this. Of course, when I was in Massachusetts, I had to go visit the Geochron at MIT, and this is the Geochron at MIT, and there's actually in the other room over there, there is a mechanical clock at MIT too that's been there for who knows how long. It looked pretty old. They've had their restored about 15 years ago. They had one restored. So that was a cool thing to do. But I get beyond the borders of the United States. And I also go to, this is up in Bletchley Park, about an hour north of London. And this is the National Radio Center. They have a Geochron, as you can see. I'm panning past it. And Martin is talking to me about the 20,000 visitors that they have. And so they staff it whenever the museum is open. It's a big park. You might have seen The Imitation Game. This is where it was filmed. This is where the first supercomputer was ever made to crack Nazi codes. And they have so many visitors. They see the Geochron, but more than that, they have these guys, the ham radio operators that just volunteer and teach people about what ham radio is. And you can see on that sign, you can't read it, but it says, please don't touch anything because there's a lot going on in that shack. Great people. Some other travels might take me to see Dr. Tamitha Skov. You might, if you follow her on YouTube, she's a space weather woman with over 250,000 viewers. And some of the data that we use on Geochron is stuff that ran across her computer. And she's got a Geochron and a wonderful conversation. Boy, was she lots of fun down in Los Angeles. This I took this about 4 weeks ago. She was super cool, and I'll be back to see her soon. But most of the people that I visit are like ham radio. So 50% of Geochron's audience is ham radio. And I figured this out a few months after purchasing the company. And I thought, well, I better get my license because these are my people now. And so I got my license, and it was through that knowledge of getting the license and through a host of people who told me what to do that we created the Geochron digital product with a special bundle just for ham radio people and the things that they wanted to see. This is David Slobodnik. He is living in Athens, Georgia right now, retired hospital administrator, 3 big parrots. Oftentimes I'm spending the night in their guest bedroom And then we get up in the morning, I have a nice omelet, and then I'm on my motorcycle to go visit the next Geochron customer. Again, one of my favorite things ever. But there are also mechanical clocks that are out there. So since 1964, we've been building this mechanical clock. This is Dr. Heine in Louisville, Kentucky, and he's got a mechanical. And we had a wonderful night drinking whiskey and eating brisket in his house in that living room, in that dining room behind us. And the mechanical clock is the genesis for this whole thing. So it's about the size of a 42-inch TV. It weighs 37 pounds, and it's got mechanical 300 moving mechanical parts that form the gray line in real time. And when people who don't know what it is look at it, they ask if it's digital. And I'm like, no, 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 this is mechanical. And it is. So there are warped aluminum spears that warp in time in the 365-degree cycle as the map moves at 1 inch an hour from left to right on little AC synchrotron motors. There are some 30,000 mechanical clocks out there and have been appearing in major movies and back in the 80s and the 90s. So the one that I hear about most often is The Hunt for Red October. And in that idea, the late great James Earl Jones is here on the set for The Hunt for Red October with a Geochron behind him. And I've got this picture in my office, like a Paramount production picture. Pretty cool. But I have lots of pictures of geochrons with presidents. The main story that people like to hear is when Gorbachev first visited the United States after the fall of the Berlin Wall. He came up and Reagan gave him an example of an American ingenuity, and it was a geochron mechanical clock because he had one in his office. He had one in the White House. He had one as governor of California. And the old guy on the left side, that's James Kilburg, who invented the geochron mechanical clock. And the business was in the family for 40 years before it came to me. And I brought it into sort of this century with the digital clock. But we still make the mechanical clock. So this is what our shop looks like. We restore about 300 mechanical clocks per year. And we build about 100 new mechanical clocks a year. They're custom ordered. The parts, it takes about 25 hours of labor. They cost between $2,000 and $4,000. When people ask you, who's your audience? I'm like, well, from a mechanical clock, it's like rich guys who say this on a wall someplace. And they're like, or the people who were like saved up and retired. And they're like, oh, I had one of those in our faculty hall for 20 years when I was a professor of astrophysics. I really want one. And so I'm proud to say that even though it may not have been the best business choice, Geochron Mechanical did not die, and it's not going down under my leadership. And that really was one of the reasons why I created digital, so that we can keep this mechanical anachronistic oddity alive. And it's beautiful. So this is an office. This is a patent attorney's office in Texas, and one of the guys that I'd love to visit someday. He's got a mechanical on above his desk, and on the left side, he's like a twofer picture. So I'm going to show you some pictures of installations throughout this presentation that are beautiful, gorgeous ham shack installations and others. These are not my ham. This isn't my ham shack. It's not my set. We run a contest at the end of the year that has people submit to win a prize of the best photo. And one of the categories is the ham shack category. And so you'll be seeing like the best that of pictures. I show these pictures more than I show pictures of my own children. I'm so proud of what we've done here at Geochron. So the beginning of the digital clock, talking about digital now, is about 6 months after I bought the company. We ran out of money. So I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you open up the checking account and you can't pay all of your bills. So we had that moment at Geochron Mechanical because it was slow. We didn't have a lot of restorations, and we were frankly a little overweight, too top heavy on labor. And so I had the idea. Somebody had been telling me like, you really ought to make a digital clock, and I didn't know the first thing about that. But I hired a developer. We cleared a wall away from the out of the shop to set up our computers, and I said, Tegan, who's sitting behind me there, I'm like, let's get busy making a Geochron digital clock. And the reason why it worked, and they had tried it in the past, is because the ubiquity of 4K screens. Otherwise, it would look like a simple browser window with a lot of cool stuff on the front of it, kind of like the ham clock. And you can see my YouTube video on ham clock and how it compares to Geochron. But the 4K is now cheap and in everybody's homes. and the right platform to deliver brilliant, beautiful maps. And in the beginning, it just looked like a basic map. It looked like a copy of the mechanical clock. But over time, we've been building on it, adding new layers, finding new API sources, essentially becoming a data aggregator through which we bring in all kinds of new data so you can see a living map of the world. And it's gone to beyond just ham shacks. It's gone to like this is the bridge of the largest, second largest cruise ship in the world, the Princess of the Seas, Cardinal Lines, and Carnival Lines, sorry. And there's a geochron on the bridge on the back wall. And I'm proud of that picture. What I wouldn't give to sit on that chair for just a couple minutes, say, engage or take us out. I would love that. That'd be super awesome. The geochron on the back. But people send me pictures all the time when they see it in the media. This is astronaut Scott Kelly, and he's not in Denver. He's actually in Colorado Springs, and he's clearly got a geochron behind him. I know where he lives. I got his address. We've been talking on email. One of my bucket lists is to visit that guy too. I would love to shake his hand in that storied office where he has a NASA suit that was used in a spacewalk. That'd be pretty awesome. So what did we create? I'm going to jump over here to the live geochron. And this is the way the world looks right now. So let me move I'm going to move over here. There we go. Looks better. All right. So what am I looking at? Well, I see a lot of DXing going on. 10 meters is hot between the East Coast and Japan right now. The Beacon network is on. And these are live conversations. These are live transmissions that are happening right now. There is a hurricane that is just drifting off and hopefully stays away from the East Coast, which it looks like it will. Those little orange round dots that you see up and down the West Coast, down into South America, and a lot, often over the in the ASEAN region, those are earthquakes that have happened recently. The green is radar where it's raining. The blue is snow where it's snowing. And then you can see a smattering of cloud cover. And there's much more to see, and I'll get into that in just a second. Jumping back over here to my presentation. The way that we put this together was if you streamed Netflix the whole time on a small little computer, like maybe you've got one, you'd be consuming hundreds of gigabytes a day, and you would get a note from your provider saying you've exceeded your limit. So we needed a way to be able to generate a 4K image without streaming it, but we wanted to provide live information. And so through a little computer, like a display computer, this is an Intel quad-core x86 computer, we provide the live maps and all the time and the functions, and the rendering is on the client device. And then we send it about 15 megabytes an hour instead of 15 gigabytes an hour so that you can have a configurable 4K display with vectorized information of just what you want to see. So this is how Geochron, this is kind of the platform that we're using. And the way it looks like is this. So I'm pulling the Geochron out of the box. It's heavy, looks like a big, it's about a pound. And it's just basically a computer without a screen and without a keyboard. But it operates with the remote that you see there and the power supply. And then it all gets plugged into the back of your TV. The back of the TV has got an HDMI port. You supply your own 4K TV because I'm not in the business of selling TVs. I just want to sell the platform and create a platform for the maps. And then we plug it in. So the unit runs pretty hot because it's fanless. And so it's just as hot as the inside of your computer, but that doesn't damage the components. And so a lot of people just let it swing in free air, or you have get a little bracket that'll put it up on the TV. And that's how the installation runs. Everything else is operated from the remote control or from the app that we use. So what have we added to the Geochron since I kind of made a copy of the mechanical clock? One of our most popular features is the live video from the International Space Station. You could see the International Space Station and where it is and its future path, but to see what it looks like from the International Space Station on top of the map, like a picture-in-picture, that is pretty awesome. And it's magical. So when the daylight's showing on the Earth and the video is working and everything links up just right, and our servers are firing that video signal out, this is what it looks like on the Geochron. You can see the world in real time. And this is what I'm trying to accomplish. So often we're just scrolling and scrolling on our phones up and down, trying to see what's going on. But on the Geochron, you can take in all the information about the world, and for ham radio in particular, through a map. And that's what we're all about. So this is what I'm trying to accomplish with Geochron. So we added other layers too. earthquakes all over the place. This particular screenshot's interesting because it shows a 3.74 earthquake magnitude earthquake in the Midwest. And so there's not a caldera there. There's not volcanic activity there. It's not on a tectonic plate like you'd see all across up and down the West Coast. But the reason why it's having earthquakes, and recently in the last 5 years in the Midwest, is because of fracking. So they're injecting fluid right down into the mantle of the earth to draw up all the petroleum that they want to get that creates energy. And I think it's really cool that you could see that on a geochron. Aviation is something that we provide for free for everybody who has a geochron. You want to see where that the whole airline network is at. That's easy to do. You just get in there and you select for your airline. You can see where all the airlines are at that time. So if I jump over here I'm going to zoom in just a moment into mine. So we're ready for that. Okay, I'm coming back. So there's airlines. And then we have a remote app, which I was just looking down using right now so I could configure my screen. We just released this about a month ago because the little up, down, left, right remote here that I've got in my hand just got too old. Up, down, left, right was not enough. We needed something that was a little bit faster. And so now we have the remote app. So coming back over to, yeah. All right. And there's lots of new layers that we have to operate through both the remote control and the app. This picture was taken 12 months ago, back during the hurricane season, which we are experiencing right now, although it's a little late. We see 3 hurricanes that were occurring in the Atlantic Ocean. And then we see 3 typhoons simultaneously coming out of the Pacific Ocean and running up into southeastern China and into the Philippines. And so when you zoom in on the North American zoom from the geochron, this is what it looked like. And if you go to our Facebook page right now, sometimes I'll post dramatic pictures like from a couple of days ago when Hurricane Helene was jamming up into that same region. You wonder why people live there, but jamming up into that same region. And it's really fun to watch on a geochron. There's lots of other weather layers too, jet streams and animated wind, the vapor. If you're familiar with windy.com, I looked at that and said, can we make the wind look like that? And yes, we can. So it just takes time and development effort, but I'm not one to sit around and wait for the product to improve on its own. It just takes work. I don't want to own something that isn't getting better. And so that's why Geochron is doing all this cool stuff, because me and my 2 developers are constantly adding new stuff to it. So you can always find lightning over South America because the great heat mass of the organic biomass of the Amazon forest is pushing up the air, creating giant clouds, which create a magnetic disturbance between the cloud and the earth, and lightning constantly in that area. And then vapor trails, which look really cool. And then the ever photogenic temperature layer, which you could get for actually this one is just provided as far as data because it looks so cool. You can see in this picture that in South America, man, it is cooking. It's okay in Africa, chilly in everywhere but Spain, up in Europe, and really terribly hot in the South, American South, and terribly cold where I was at when I took that picture in October of last year. So it's always fun. And there's things that you can see that are happening in real life. So here's a story from a few years ago. We got an evacuation notice in my town outside of Portland, Oregon. We have a burning season around here. There's a lot of stuff to burn, a lot of forests that are dry. And so they are the driest about this time of year. And so we were told to evacuate for fear that the fire was going to overrun the town. I took this picture from my car as I was driving. And just at that time, as the neighborhood was evacuating, and there were rumors of people who were looting houses in the rural areas because there weren't enough sheriffs to go around to patrol all the recently abandoned houses, UPS pulls up and delivers $250,000 worth of computers on my front doorstep, doesn't ring the doorbell, and then drives off. And everyone's packing up. And I'm like, whoa, hey. So my daughter comes out. She says, Dad, somebody jumped off a bunch of packages. And I'm like, what's going on? So we're like, we need to get these off the street. So we loaded them into the front room, and I had been expecting them, but this was the worst possible timing. And my girls were getting ready to go up to Seattle to stay with the in-laws because we were supposed to evacuate. And then I'm like, I'm not leaving because this is my life savings right here. So I'm going to sit here with a shotgun and protect this until I can figure out what to do with it. So the next morning, We loaded it up into the back of the Ranger. I loaded it up myself into the back of the Ranger, knowing that the value of the cargo was 100 times the value of the Ranger that I had it in. And then I drove it downtown to deliver it to Jeff, who graciously took it off my hands for a couple of days in a warehouse that was unaffected by the fire. So this is a really small business, and I love it that I could see that drama simultaneously on a geochron. You can see the fires that are raging in the Pacific Northwest by looking at this carbon monoxide layer that is on the geochron, along with radar and wind. But that's what all that orange is in the state of Oregon. So let's get into the Ham Radio Premium Bundle. This is what we all came for. Again, those beautiful pictures from the installation contest. This is the winner for 2023. He is from Toronto. I met him at Hamvention in Ohio, in Dayton, and super cool guy. And so his son climbed up on the back of a ladder and took that picture, and he won the contest and got a prize. Pretty great. So what we did to create the Ham Radio Bundle was we started with a map that you should all recognize. And then we added propagation, including geocentric projection and FT8, WSPR, and DX. So this should look familiar. Some you can have call signs or you can elect to not have them. And then all the different lines that are stretched across, kind of like in PSK Reporter, they're all coded by color. So it's like opening up a phone book and taking a look at the whole world to see what the ham radio community is doing and what bandwidth they're, what bandwidth they're, what wavelength they're on. So putting it all together, and this would be a typical picture. I see somebody going nuts up in Vancouver on 20 meters. I see AMSAT satellites that are swimming around. The one's coming down off the coast of Paraguay, showing its footprint. And I see the International Space Station swooping up out of the South Pacific Ocean. That's what that dotted line is. I see earthquakes that are happening up in a little bit the Middle East, but often in Asia and in the Jakarta region. And then I see the gray line in real time, of course. And then I'm also looking at that green haze is where it's raining. And this is what it looks like to put together the whole world into a geochron. So here's AMSAT satellites and their footprint, as I mentioned. Putting it together, there's more satellites that are swimming around, and those white flashes, because this is in the fast time, is just a bunch of airlines that are flying, rotating through. There are currently, in this picture, about 5,000 to 6,000 commercial airlines that are in flight, but right now there are 10,828 because I'm looking at the geochron right behind me, and I can check out that live geochron. There it is. All right, so what I'm showing here on the live geochron when it comes to aviation, looks like I've got a really small data set that is selected. At the top, you see that there's Atlas Air, and there's 17 Atlas Air flights out of 2,828. And so Atlas Air, I see one that's coming up into Florida, but one that's over Ohio, and I think that's all that's over North America. Atlas Air is actually Amazon Prime. So those are Amazon's planes that are flying around. Oh, there's another one that's coming into Atlanta right now. Pretty cool. All right, coming back just a moment. If you are a QRZ subscriber, you can check out, you can upload your logs so that you can see everywhere that you've been and show everybody else where you've been. And of course, every picture that I get has got their call sign prominently displayed. I'm KJ7ZSU, K3LR owns 3 mechanical clocks and 2 digitals, and that would be Tim Duffy out of DX Engineering, who's been a long-time sponsor for Geochron. We surely appreciate their encouragement and publicity. They're like marketing madmen over there. It's pretty great. And we're adding new stuff all the time. So there's a gray line, but there's also a moon terminator for those of you who like bouncing off the moon. So here's the sublunar point currently at the time I took this picture. This is the moon that is right apparent position is directly over Australia in a full moon cycle. And then the pink is where it's showing. That would be the sublunar point and the moon terminator. This should look familiar. This is also on the map. Courtesy of Paul Herman. Nice guy. This should look familiar. That should look familiar. And now we get into the maximum usable frequency. A geochron is a great way to display that. So here I am on the West Coast. And at the time I took this in 2021, there was 20, I had 20, okay, so the locations, the green locations are the atmospheric ionospheric radars that are probing the atmosphere, shooting bandwidth up into the ionosphere and seeing what comes back, and thereby coming up with a reading of the maximum usable frequency, because everything over that frequency is not going to bounce off the ionosphere. And then a supercomputer takes all that information and puts it into a heat map. So that's what you get from the topographical lines that you see throughout the map. So if I am broadcasting from the West Coast over to Japan, I'm going through 20 megahertz maximum usable frequency to 18 to 15. So my maximum usable frequency is going to be 15, because anything above that, and it's going to bounce off the ionosphere when it gets close to Asia. So this is how people use the geochron to read maximum usable frequency at the same time as the DXing, at the same time as the earth sciences, and so on. Another way to see that would be to use the heat map, although I don't use it very often that way because it kind of obliterates all the other layers. That's the problem when you have so much. We can't show everything simultaneously, but we do have opacity adjustments so that you can bring the layers back. So it's like 10% of strength or 20% of strength, like bring that layer back or just turn it off altogether. And then also configuration profiles so that you can rotate through the things that you want to see, since it's only a two-dimensional surface. You can't see everything you want all the time, as illustrated by this mess, which is almost like a lot of things that are turned on. So I'm seeing FT8, I'm seeing International Space Station, I'm seeing maximum usable frequency, I'm seeing rain, I'm seeing wind, I'm seeing not wind, but I'm seeing the solar conditions, and I'm seeing call signs, and I am seeing precipitation, and then the cloud cover as well. Just way too much. So this is why we have adjustments for everything, so that you can see what you want to see, and then also flip between screens, so that on a rotating basis, you can just rotate it every 2 minutes, so that you can get a picture of the world, even if it doesn't fit on one two-dimensional surface at any given time. You can move between surfaces, right? Just like desktops in Windows. So putting it all together, it gets quite busy. You can find all this stuff in multiple browser windows. I'm not saying that I'm creating that I'm showing anything that isn't publicly available. A lot of it is available. Some of it I do pay for, but no one else is combining this together into a big, beautiful map on a 4K screen. And to my knowledge, even outside of ham radio, nobody is doing this. Everybody is either streaming, and that would be a fixed resolution, or they're putting it up in a browser window, like the Ham Clock, which does a great job at that. This is another, we're trying to accomplish something more with this, which is why it's ham radio, it's earth sciences, it's aviation, it's much more than that, as you can see here. So the question that I get usually is, what does it cost to get into it? And so here's what it costs. If you started, you got to have a platform, and then the platform adds a bunch of free stuff. If you just plug it into the internet, and I've got a Wi-Fi and I've got an Ethernet port, and plug it in, and I will send data to it of live things that are happening around the globe in real time, as long as you plug it in for the lifetime of the unit. And so you would start with a platform that's $3.99 with the coupon that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And then that goes to the global maps, and that's all included. All that rendering and stitching together is included, the gray line in real time. And then 16 live layers, which includes some basic weather, the aviation, and some other stuff like Earth at night lights. And you've got to have the internet on, because that's in real time. And so to get real time stuff, you've got to be connected to a real time source. But the maps and the time and the gray line and the atlas, they'll work off grid just fine. But if you want the live stuff, it's got to be connected to the internet. And then for specialty audiences like ham radio, we have special data that we either tunnel into to get, we have a network to get it, or we're outright purchasing it from somebody else. And that costs between $2 and $11 per month. And it adds another 50 live layers. So what's the difference between what's included and what's the premium, like what you have to pay for? And here it is. So what's always included is what I want students to see. Like if you install this in a school, as ARRL has purchased many items, like, what did they purchase? I don't know, a couple crates full of geochrons that they can put up in classes to interest students, this is what I would want students to see. This would be the Earth at night lights. This would be basic weather where it's raining and where the cloud cover. This would be the gray line so people understand the seasons. This would be all the different maps, including the ham radio map, population density, so you can see that the west coast of the United States, where I'm at, actually nobody lives here. Everybody's on the east side of the United States. And if you go down to Southeast Asia and India, that's where half the world population lives right now. This is what I want them to know. But for specialty audiences, this is information that we have to actively get and then propagate through our servers. You can have weather presets, or you can have the advanced weather with all of it. The ham radio bundle is $6 a month. The earthquakes and the ISS, the live view. You can do that a la carte on a monthly basis or on an annual basis. But if you wanted all the data all the time at your just being pumped to the geochron so you can see whatever you want, that wouldn't cost anything more than a total of $11 a month. We call that the Global Pass for total situational awareness. So that's the platform. And then for the specialty stuff, that's what it costs to get all that data. Everything that's on the screen, you can try out as a trial and see if you like it or not. So because you listened to me rattle on about Geochron, I'll have a coupon that'll make that even cheaper here at the end of the in about 60 seconds. This is the winner for 2022. And this guy works for a cabling company, and he's amazing at cabling because I can't even see the cables. That Ham Shack out easy is rocking awesome. I think that looks awesome. Love it. But this one I like because this guy is a weather observer that lives on the East Coast. He's obviously a ham. You can see from the screens. He's got his geochron up, and he loves a certain science fiction series because he's got a giant Enterprise model that's just off his shoulder. Can you see it? So this guy is obviously a first generation fella. Because of my age, I'm a next generation kind of guy, but I love that Starship Enterprise that he's got parked on his desk over there. I think he did that on purpose, but I don't know. That's one of my favorite illustrations. So because you listened to me talk about this whole thing, here's the deal. If you went to Hamvention, you'd get $100 off. If you went to Hamcation or any kind of ham show where they were selling Geochron and the dealer had cleared it with me ahead of time, you'd get $100 off the retail price. But if you get it with this system, you'll also get a free ham radio bundle for a whole year, and you'll get free shipping if you buy it from geochron.com. And all you have to do is just email to coupon@geochron.com, and that will reply back automatically with a coupon code. And then you just use that coupon code to get yourself a geochron at geochron.com. And that would come with a free bundle. And I would think you guys would pick the ham radio bundle. That would make sense. So that's the end. So this is kind of what I've been working on for the last 7 years. Let me jump on back to just me. Yeah, actually, let's do this one. So this is the time where I say, does anybody have any questions? This is my favorite part because I already knew what I was going to say, but I don't know what your questions are. I'm ready. All right. Anybody with the questions?
Patrick, love the presentation. We had one of the original Geochrons back in my dorm when I was in college. So really great to see the company going on. Real quick question. I was just wondering if there's a way to save presets with the Geochron digital so that you can flip between views.
Yes. So that would be called configuration profiles. The way that we do that is you could save up to 7 profiles, and then you can just select them, or you can rotate through them at certain intervals. I'm going to jump over here to my live geochron, and I'll show you what I mean. So if I jump over here to the general tab, and I'm coming down to the configuration profiles, I don't have any entered in on this unit, but you can have them you could set them up and then add them to the rotation, as you see, and then rotate them every 10 minutes, every 5, 10, 15, all the way up to every 30 minutes. So you can get to see what you want of all the layers. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Very neat.
You bet. Yeah. I don't have to do much work to find out what people want. I just have to open my inbox every day, and I get tons of emails saying, can you do that? Can you do this? This is super cool. Can you do that?
So I have a question real quick.
Alex.
So if you were going to summarize the ham radio bundle in kind of like a couple of sentences or maybe a paragraph, what would you say was in it? Because you say it's the bundle, but what's for people
Yeah.
that don't know, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I will just show you. So I'm going to jump back over to here to my Geochron. Now there's lots of options that are behind this. Can you read it on your screen? I know you took away the screen sharing.
No, you do the screen sharing, we don't.
My screen sharing was canceled. Just a moment. Let me jump back into this. I'm going to back to, okay, here we are.
Yeah.
Great. All right.
Can't read
So
it.
here's the screen sharing. So if I jump in, you can see that I'm enabling, this is the ham radio bundle. Behind this, there are all sorts of options that you could check out. Like if I go to FT8 spots, you can select for your different meters to what you want to see, what you have. That would be true for whisper and DX spotting, entering your call sign, solar terrestrial weather, which are 3 different widgets there, center projection, which doesn't apply in Zoom, which is why it's grayed out, but it's grayed out, but it will apply in the global mode. I mentioned the lunar subpoints, the CQ and ITU maps, and I can turn that on right now. And then also the Maidenhead grid and so on. So if I jump out here to, let's see, I'm going to jump back to global and get to the ham radio map, and then we're going to watch it render again. And here it comes up with all the different stuff that I was talking about. I'm going to back out of the menu so you can see the whole thing. And that's a pretty good representation of the weather bundle and the ham radio bundle all put together.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Shock test.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Hey, Rich.
So how do you derive the time? Are you using a time server from the internet?
Yes. So for the Geochron digital clock, the computer here has a little RTC that's inside of it, but more accurate would be the time server that is a part of your ISP, your internet service provider. So every couple of minutes, it'll ping your ISP and say, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? And so thereby you have a super accurate clock, way more accurate than the mechanical clock, but that's sort of the charisma of the mechanical clock. It's mechanical, so it's not, it'll go off. It'd be off plus or minus by a couple minutes every month if you're lucky. But the Geochron digital should stay dead on because it's syncing every couple minutes with your ISP.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Question about the configuration. So, well, actually, I'm curious. So, when you said it syncs for your ISP, can you set what you wanted to STP, NTP server you wanted to sync from?
No, it would be your
internet?
It would be your ISP's default NTP server.
Oh, okay. And all the configuration stuff that could be done with the remote that you were showing before when you had it up on the side, that can all be done from the app or the web browser interface on a phone?
Yes, that's actually true. Right. So I have it here, and I don't have a great way to show this on the screen, but if I jump over to menu, just a moment, and I go to layers and maps, man, I haven't done it on this phone yet. Yeah, so configuration profiles can be set up via the app on the phone, which is much faster than using the remote control because the Geochron does not have to think about what the menu looks like because the menu never appears on the screen while you're using the app. You're just looking at the result. It's just looking at the map the whole time.
Okay. And so since it does connect up to a TV through the HDMI interface, that means if you have a TV that has multiple HDMIs, you can just have the Geochron stuff running, but flip between that and say like the news or something else if you wanted to. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me speak to a question that comes up often about that. And I'm going to jump over here to the live Geochron again. And it's really busy. That is a mess. I think I need a configuration profile for that one. So it's a computer. So when you turn here's the remote for my TV. And when I turn off the TV and then turn it on with a remote, the TV never actually turned off. It just turned off the screen because it still has to listen for the signal from the remote. So it goes into a low power state. But when you turn off a Geochron by unplugging it or pressing the button on the side, it's a computer. It truly turns off. It's like a laptop, and it's going to take 3 or 4 minutes to boot it back up. To figure that out and to do a shortcut, so let's say you're on HDMI 3 and you're going to jump to HDMI 1 to watch TV, and you don't want your Geochron pulling much power. You don't want it pulling any internet. You just want to move down to a low power mode. I'm pressing the power button, and I'm going to the sleep mode. And so as I move to the sleep mode, you see it's cutting down. It's going to go to standby, and then it's just going to be a black screen until I press any button on the remote again. And so this is an effective way to conveniently turn the Geochron on and off being in quotes, right? Like your TV. So I press that button again and we're back in.
Oh, okay. And well, actually, so yeah, that's a little bit better. Like I have a Roku, and
Yeah.
that does the same thing, but it takes a while for the Roku to boot up all the time.
Yeah.
In standby mode, it's really just it's like sleeping. Your computer comes back alive very quickly instead of having to boot from scratch.
Yeah. So people get annoyed by that. They're just like, hey, it takes 3 minutes to turn this thing on. Why can't it turn on my TV? Well, put it into sleep mode and it will.
Gotcha. All right. Thanks. That's cool.
Yeah. All right. Other questions? Good. Well, so I'm Patrick at Geochron. That's my name and my email address. If you've got any questions, this is what I do. I just sit here all day long going through emails. We do have a support system, of course, if you have trouble, but at the real problems, they always wind up with me. We have been, if we have a unit, computers do die sometimes or there's bugs. And if there's a problem with that, we are still replacing units from 7 years ago. So if it's a 1 year warranty, that's not actually true. We're just replacing stuff when it goes wrong because ultimately I want everybody to be happy. It is certainly easier to keep a customer than find a new one. And so the ham radio community has been extraordinarily generous and kind to us as we've gotten this beautiful product up and running. So thank you for all that.
I just have a question about, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just curious about the mechanical Geochron.
Okay.
So the first glance at it, I thought it was a digital thing too. So the map and everything is permanently on the screen. And then is it through those prisms behind the screen that you show where the gray line moves and highlight certain parts of it and darken other parts? Is that how that works?
I don't have a great picture to show what that's about, but let me jump back here in my presentation and I can show you, let's take a look at that. So here I am going to jump back over that. Okay, so here's a front facing picture of it. That map is 6 feet long and it loops around. So there are actually 3 maps that loop and the map moves at 1 inch an hour from left to right. So behind that map are LED lights that light up blue polycarbonate plastic bows inside the Geochron that warp over a 365-day cycle to create the gray line in real time. So there are 2 motors that are running inside the clock. One is moving the map that's moving from left to right at 1 inch an hour. And then the other one is moving the calendar and what we call the bows to create that flex that shows the gray line in real time. And as you know, it moves, it'll move into an inverse over 6 months and then back. And then it also moves the analemma, which is the figure 8 in the middle. So that is about the most concise explanation I can give to you about how a Geochron mechanical works.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the map itself is moving across the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a big, long map. It's a big, long map. 6 feet long.
Okay.
The map you're seeing there is 2 feet across. So that's 2 times 3.
Gotcha. Okay. Now I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very interesting. If I had $3,000 to spend, maybe I might do that.
Yeah, to build it, it's never been like a great business idea. It's just been like something super cool. And I had plenty of opportunities to throw in the towel and say, this is ridiculous. Why am I even running this shop? Why am I doing this? I'm not even getting paid standing here. So, but I didn't want to be the guy to kill it. Because like the owners from like the family business, they still email me once in a while and say, hey, is everything okay? You still have that one tool? You still got that one press I remember from 30 years ago? Man, I love that thing. So I like that stuff too.
So I have a question on the mechanical clock too. Did they come in different sizes? Because that one looks really huge, but the one that was sitting that was behind President Reagan, seemed a lot smaller.
Yeah. Let's jump back over to here, this one. Yeah, great. So they are all the same size, and they are about, I think about 40, if I remember, they're about 40 inches diagonally. 40 inches diagonal. They've always been the same size. No Geochron has been, there's never been a super huge Geochron made. There's never been a tiny Geochron made.
But you said something was 6 feet something. What was
the map?
Feet?
The map itself, so the Lexan map that moves from left to right, it's 6 feet long and wraps around inside.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So if you unraveled it, it would be 6 feet, but it wraps around.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, in an endless loop. I really got to show a picture of what that looks like. I think I have some old movies of how that looks like. I put that in the presentation. Yeah.
I also have a question about the mechanical. I'm wondering, do you do restorations, or do you also offer updates to whatever on the older units?
Sure. So the bulk of the business is restorations. There were 30,000 of these that were made over time. And I don't know how many are still in operation, but I do know that they usually don't last more than 15 to 20 years without needing a little bit of tender loving care because it's a machine. And so the bulk of our work is restoring clocks. So every day UPS pulls up to the shop and we get more restorations, and they're usually it's sort of a hand holding operation, right? So we're always we know the customer, we go back, we look up their serial number, we see what it's about, we're contacting them, it's back and forth because it's usually a precious thing that they have, and they want to be able to, they want to know where that baby is at that's been hanging in their living room or their office for the last 20 years. And so it's a little bit different than Geochron Digital because we have thousands of customers and it's a digital product, and so it's a different experience. But when you have a mechanical, it's sort of like taking in your old antique car and say, can you work on this, please? And we're like, oh yeah, we'll take good care of you. And so this is how it works at the shop. It's a different kind of a model. And then we do build about 100 new clocks a year for people who want a custom mechanical clock. But we have made a couple improvements to the clock over the last 10 years, things that I did to the clock. And that was, I took out AC synchrotron motors and I put in stepper motors, which were more durable, magnetic steppers. And thank goodness, because it kind of, that's a long, sad story, but we were just getting killed on the durability of the AC synchrotron motors with the little tiny gearbox underneath them that took 400 revolutions per minute and spun it down to 1 revolution an hour. And isn't that just fraught with things that could go wrong inside of a half an inch of a gearbox? So, whoa, I got a course on gearboxes and how they work. But fortunately, we actually hired the guy to help us sort that out. And he's like, what are you doing this for? You know, stepper motors, right? You know what those are? Tell me about that. Okay. Well, and so eventually now all clocks are restored and made with stepper motors.
You just answered one of my questions, because I was going to ask you if you had used synchronous motors.
Yeah. In the beginning.
For the time. In the beginning. So you synchronized off of AC line frequency.
Right. And so then as the power grid has become more irregular with its frequency, so the clocks became more irregular because they were getting their hertz and their revolutions from the hertz of the power grid. And if somebody wanted to take their Geochron and then move it to Europe, it just wouldn't work, or it moved twice it'd move at a totally different speed because the frequency was different.
Yeah. So are they set mechanically?
Are they sent mechanically?
Or do you set the time manually?
Yes. So underneath the Geochron mechanical clock, there are 2 screws. One sets the map, which sets the hour time. And then there's 3. And then you actually put your finger right on the minute dial and then just smudge the minute dial to where it's supposed to be. And then it just ticks from there. It's pretty manual. And then in the middle, there's another drop down aluminum, like thumb screw that moves the calendar to where it's supposed to be. And then the calendar is synced to where the gray line is supposed to be. And so it's it's not a computer.
Right. And I suspect you're deriving the time from a crystal base clock.
So now with the stepper motors, which do require a real-time clock and a small circuit board inside the computer, there's a crystal RTC that's in a mechanical in all the new mechanical clocks and the restored clocks too. Yep.
Did the mechanical clocks originally have some kind of like a fluorescent light background, or
They
instead of
did.
using LEDs?
Yeah, so we changed that too. What was happening was that they take a lot of energy, and it was really popular to move to LED lights. But also at the same time, fluorescents burn hot. And so over 20 years, they would cook the plastics on the inside of the clock. And then you would see like, this is where it's supposed to be night, but then night looked like this, and then night looked like that. And then it would start, because it's just crumbling down to the bottom of the clock. So we'd get in these mechanical clocks, and it's just like the thick blue plastics, which create the gray line, were just like crumbling in our hands. And we're like, and it was because they were baking from the fluorescent lights. Other questions?
Quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Lots of challenges.
Yeah, I didn't have gray hair before, but I do now. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Rich. Other questions? All right.
Great. Wonderful presentation. Thank you, Patrick. Really interesting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for all your good work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to do is to talk about Geochron. It's my life.
Well, you're blessed that you have something that you're so excited about and that gives you so much joy and gives joy to others. So thank you for that.
I hope so.
All right.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Here we go.
Great. And